Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Political Excess. Today, let's do a deep dive into the New York governor's race. This thing might actually finally becoming competitive, but first, let's get on Ballotpedia and get some background about this race. The incumbent governor is Democrat Kathy Hochul. She previously served as the lieutenant governor, and she assumed the office a little over a year ago when Governor Andrew Cuomo resigned. Before serving as lieutenant governor, she actually served one term in the U.S. House, but was defeated for re-election back in 2012. And her opponent on the Republican side is Lee Zeldin. Zeldin is a congressman from Long Island serving since 2015. So let's take a look at their primaries. Well, for Kathy Hochul, she did have some challengers, but she ended up winning very easily with over 67% of the vote. And Lee Zeldin, he did have a competitive primary. He won a four-way race there with 43% of the vote over Andrew Giuliani, who had 23.4%. And if you want to compare raw vote totals from the primaries, Democrats had 764,000, while the Republicans had 340,000. I don't put much weight on primary vote totals, but if you do, the Democrats had a better than 2-to-1 advantage. And it will actually just be these two candidates on the ballot, as no other third-party candidates qualified. Let's go down here and see how this race is rated. All three sites, Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Larry Sabato, they all have it at safe Democratic. My own rating at the beginning of the month was also safe for the Democrats. However, at this point, I would revise that down to likely Democratic, and I would probably also expect to see these other sites revise their rating down as well. We all know New York is a blue state, probably a very blue state. New York City dominates. It's very, very blue there. Even parts of upstate New York, some of them are blue, and the red areas, they're not all that red either. New York has elected a Republican governor not that long ago. George Pataki won 3 terms beginning in 1994, and he sort of came out of nowhere toward the end, and it took him some time to build momentum as well. But ever since Pataki left office, even in the red wave year of 2010, the Democrats have won by at least 14 points in all of those elections. 4 years ago in that race, Andrew Cuomo got over 59% of the vote. So it's certainly an uphill climb for a Republican to win statewide in any office in New York. It's going to take someone that has a lot of crossover appeal, someone a little bit more moderate. It usually tends to suit Republican candidates in the Northeast. And Lee Zeldin, he could be the guy to do it. You need somebody to excite the Trump voters to a moderate extent, but you cannot totally alienate all those Democrats in the 5 boroughs. Zeldin would have to do really well upstate, and many of those Democrats that would come out for Hochul, their turnout is going to have to be depressed by issues such as crime and inflation. There's still a couple weeks to go. Plenty can happen still. Let's go down a little bit further and see which way the counties are trending on a presidential level. And this shows us that 71.5% of the population lives in 17 counties that are solid Democratic, and those are defined as having voted for the Democrat for president in the last 3 elections. And on the opposite end of that, only 8.6% of the population lives in 26 counties that are solid Republican. There are another 15 counties that have 16.8% of the population that is trending Republican. Those are counties that voted for Obama back in 2012 and then voted for Donald Trump 2 times. So let's go down here and take a look at some of these counties. And the thing to keep in mind is the shading does not indicate margins. It just indicates if they voted for the Democrat or the Republican for president in the last 1, 2, or 3 presidential elections. So let's start with these population-heavy counties in and around New York City. Kings County went massive for Joe Biden. He got almost 77% of the vote, but that's actually a little bit worse than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. As you can see, Donald Trump, he did about 4.5 points better than he did in 2016. Queens County, it's a similar story. Trump actually improved upon his margin over 4 years earlier. New York County, Trump barely did a little bit better, but still that went over 86% for Biden. Bronx County, Trump did much better actually. Yeah, he still lost by a massive, massive margin. So in counties that have a lot of population like this, just improving 2 or 3% is going to give you a lot of votes. It's not good enough for a Republican to compete here, but it is trending toward the right, and I am curious to see if that trend will continue. Now out here on Long Island, this is where Lee Zeldin is from. Last time for president, that was dead even, 49.4 each. This is where I would expect Zeldin to run it up. And same thing in Nassau County. He's going to have to flip it. Westchester County, that's another important county that has trended left. Trump only got 31% of the vote there. So for someone like Lee Zeldin to win, he's going to have to really cut into these margins and flip some of these counties in the Hudson Valley. And these counties that are already red, he's got to do even better. He can't be content with 56.8% of the vote in Oneida County. And there's other blue cities around the state. Monroe County has Rochester. Erie County has Buffalo. It would be a tall order to flip these counties, but Lee Zeldin would need to squeeze every little bit he can get out of these counties. So now let's switch over to YouTube and see what they've got on their channels. Kathy Hochul had like 6 or 7 channels. I think this is the channel for her current campaign. So she has some shorts on here with Hillary Clinton. She's trying to bring out the big guns. I really don't know how much sway Hillary Clinton has even at this point in a state like New York. Definitely amongst the elite establishment class, but I would think that's about it at this point. But anyway, I think she's got some ads on here, some media appearances. And here is Lee Zeldin's channel. He's got some ads on here. He's got some media appearances. He's fired up. He's the underdog. He's going to do whatever he can to try to get more momentum in the final couple of weeks. And we can also look at their official campaign websites. Here's Kathy Hochul's. If you want to see where she stands on the issues, or if you want to get her some cash, you can do that right here. And here's Lee Zeldin's channel. If you want to read about where he stands on the issues, see his events, or buy some of his merch. So how about the debates? Well, there hasn't been any yet. And this article actually describes how Kathy Hochul has agreed to one debate, and Lee Zeldin, he has yet to respond. So I'm not sure what that's about, because I know Zeldin wants to debate multiple times, and I believe Kathy Hochul has been evasive about that. So unless there is some issue with the forum or debate parameters, I would expect Lee Zeldin to show up. But I do agree there should be more than one debate, and I mean a real debate, on TV, prime time, at least 1 hour. If you can't do that, then I really don't know how you could be running for governor. And from Kathy Hochul's perspective, I'm sure she knows it's a blue state and she has an advantage. She might try the run-out-the-clock approach, but I have seen a lot of debates in a lot of different states. At first, it seemed like there were a lot of candidates that were going to back out of debates, but I have been pleasantly surprised to see much more of them happening than I originally thought. So let's hope this one for New York does happen. And that takes us over to Wikipedia so we can take a look at the endorsements. And here are Kathy Hochul's endorsements. She has a ton of them. There is that Hillary Clinton endorsement. She has a ton from elected officials in New York. She has a bunch of organizations, labor unions. But what about Lee Zeldin? Well, he actually has that Donald Trump endorsement. I would guess even in New York that has more sway than the Hillary Clinton endorsement. But other than that, Zeldin, he has quite a bit himself. He's got some newspapers, labor unions, etc. So how about the polling? Well, as of the time I'm making this video, in the aggregate, Kathy Hochul is up 6.1% on Real Clear Politics, 49.3 to 43.2. On 538, she's up 6.8, 49.7 to 42.9. And let's scroll down to the individual polls. And the most recent poll from Coefficient, which is a Republican pollster, they have Lee Zeldin with a lead, 46 to 45. All the other polls do show Kathy Hochul with an advantage, but if you look at this graph above, you could see the race has narrowed considerably over the past couple of months, and perhaps even more so in the past week. Now, Kathy Hochul does have the fact that she's getting over 50% in several of these polls on her side. For the most part, Lee Zeldin is in the low 40s, occasionally getting into the mid-40s. But back in the spring and early part of the summer, Zeldin was only in the 30s, and Kathy Hochul's support was in the low to mid-50s even in a lot of those polls. So let's compare these poll results to 2018. In that race, Andrew Cuomo was over 59% of the vote. Mark Molinaro was only at 36%. There's actually not a whole lot of polls, but the last two did accurately gauge Mark Molinaro's support. They definitely did underestimate Andrew Cuomo. However, the Quinnipiac poll was actually pretty close, 58 to 35. But the last thing we can do is take a look at Predicted and see what the markets are showing. This has the Democratic Party, Kathy Hochul, at 78 cents. Lee Zeldin, the Republican Party, is sitting at 25 cents. Just over 2 weeks ago, she was at 91 cents. In August, she even hit 96 cents. So this race was viewed as a complete slam dunk for the Democrats up until very recently. So the conclusion is Kathy Hochul is favored to win. But that is as of right now. Lee Zeldin has momentum, and he has time. New Yorkers might be fed up with the policies of Democratic control for so long, and plus all the national issues of crime and inflation. Yes, abortion is also an issue that a lot of Democrats in New York are going to care about. I don't know how much that's going to help or hurt Zeldin. I don't think he's really on the far right on that issue. But other than abortion, the January 6th stuff, and a couple of Biden's successes like infrastructure, I don't think the Democrats have much to run on. The issues much more favor the Republicans this year. And sometimes the electorate gets sick of one party controlling everything, and they want to change it at the executive level. And that's where Lee Zeldin is trying to cobble together the perfect coalition to be able to just barely, slightly eke out a win over Kathy Hochul. He's from Long Island. That's probably going to help him cut into some of these bluer margins a little bit more. He is young. He has more energy than Kathy Hochul. I'm sure Hochul has the machine behind her. Democrats greatly outnumber Republicans. Trump is not popular in New York. There's plenty working against Lee Zeldin. If I had to guess today, I think he would probably lose by about 7, maybe down to 5 points. That's definitely a loss, but under 10 points is where I thought this race would be 6 months ago. It seemed like this was a prime year for Republicans to not win, but make it much more competitive than the previous several elections for governor. But as the summer went on and the polls came out, it seemed like Zeldin actually had almost no chance, as was reflected here in the markets. I was ready to write off Lee Zeldin and think it just wasn't going to happen. But I guess he has needed time to get his campaign going. And those national issues, again, they're against the Democrats. So the message of change is one that is actually going to resonate in New York. Republicans might be scary to a lot of these Democratic voters, but they live it and they see it. And if their voices aren't being heard day to day, they will definitely let them know at the ballot box. This race could be a sleeper, and I do think it will be fascinating to watch in the final 2 weeks. So that is a deep dive into this New York governor's election. Of course, let me know what you think of this race down below. What are the chances for an upset? And if you enjoy this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.